end of the actuator, for instance. So if, let's do in this way. So if here, for instance, you have whatever connection you have from your actuator, I'm really bad at doing these kind of pictures. So then at one point, maybe here in the arm of the actuator, we need to have your load cell, so that at least you measure the actual load that you are going to apply. And this is the first thing. The second thing is that you need to measure the strains of the pile.
Yeah.
You can do it, for instance, using strain gauges, or you can do it also using fiber optic sensors that are like a continuous measurement.
Okay.
So let's imagine something like that. Of course, I would have a bit of redundancy. So I don't know, three fiber optics along the longitudinal direction.
Yeah, if you have one line, so if you have to save some money, and I mean gluing strain gauges is a lot of effort, you would just make one line on one side of the pile? Is that sufficient?
No, I mean, theoretically, we should have a deformation just in one direction, but practically you need.
So I already saw from your colleague you have two lines on both sides, because else you cannot have the differential. So you don't have the bending.
Sure.
So you need those.
But of course, it will be like here.
Yeah, exactly.
And
okay.
Here.
Good. So with that, we get our bending moment.
Fine. It's like that, and this is fine. Then we need somehow to measure. Okay.
Yeah, you can continue.
Yeah, sure. Then we said that we need to measure somehow the pressure inside the soil. So as we said before, there are some methods. So we may imagine to have some pressure sensor like here, different depths at different location. I will go obviously as close as possible to the elastic length of the pile. I will stay there because otherwise we can see nothing. It depends obviously on the cost of the sensors and on the number, on the amount of money that you. No, now we are talking about inside the soil, and then on the pile, the other possibility is to add on the pile. Yeah. Yeah, we can have both, or we can have just one of the two. It depends a bit.
Let's continue. We have.
Okay, and then we were discussing before about the fact that we need also to measure the displacements of the soil. Yeah. So what we can do is, for instance, for the horizontal displacement, we can use, but also for the vertical displacement, we can use, once again, fiber optics. For the horizontal, they can be placed, let's say, if this is a top view. So they can be placed something like that.
Yeah.
At different layers. So we have different fiber optic sensors at different layers. And for the vertical, we were talking about the fact that it's more difficult, the installation, but theoretically you can also do it if you think about how
I think that's sufficient.
And
that's it? Oh. We're going to discuss it. Okay. That's it?
So,
or anything missing from the group? Exactly.
To measure the vertical displacement. This can be done either with lasers or with something else, like there are even 3D scans. You can decide whatever.
Okay, I'll take over. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So, well done. There are two things to add. So these pressure cells here would be nice, but they are very difficult to install. Yeah, because especially if you want to have the horizontal pressure and not the vertical, then it's very hard. And you are mostly here interested in the horizontal pressure. So, like you said, here having some on the pile would be nice, but also that requires some effort. So I'm currently in favor of installing fiber optics, and with these fiber optics getting strains, and then from the strains transfer it to pressures and stresses. Yeah, which is not easy, but I would say that's the best thing. What I really am missing is to have here two horizontal measurements on the pile head, because else your your strain measurement here is worthless because you don't know how your pile looks like, yeah, how it is standing. As you get your bending moment, yes, but you don't get your deformation of the pile. Okay, so well done. Thank you. So for the second group, or the other group who did the first question, since we are a bit running out of time, I suggest that we go together through the results. You already told me you've chosen just one pile, which is nice. Let me see whether it comes here. So you said your result is that you're gonna use this pile, right? With the 90 centimeters, so this one here. Okay, so how about your distance to your boundaries then? How big is our pit? The pit is 5 meters. So if you use this almost 1 meter diameter pile, and you only have then 2.5 meters distance to your boundary, you will have an issue with the boundary effect. Yeah, so already from there you can say, okay, this pile is probably a bit large. So I will briefly talk you through the exercise, and by the way, you're going to get the results after. So later on, I'm going to hand all the results out to you, so you can easily have a look on that. So pile geometry, I think we discussed that. So let's first of all look at the diameter. And like I said, I would easily take, okay, let's say it's 6 times, or yeah, you should have space 6 times the pile diameter, and then you end up in 40 centimeter pile. So this is half as big as yours. This would lead us to a scale factor of about 5 if we just use the pile diameter as the scaling factor. So if we look at the pile length, yeah, then we see here, if we scale it just by the geometry, then we have a pile length of 1.6 meter. And this then also gives us here a P1. Yeah, with this formula, we also end here in this 1.6 meter. So if we now look at the wall thickness, this is very important. Why is the wall thickness so important? What can you steer with the wall thickness of a pile? If we already fix the pile diameter and the length, what will be steered by the wall thickness? Yeah, the moment of inertia, and by that the stiffness of the pile. Yeah. So if we look by geometry, then we will end up here, like you see, in 6 millimeter wall thickness. Yeah, this is just by scaling it with the geometry. But then if you look at the stiffness of the model, and here this elastic length and so on, then you will end up in this elastic length of the model, 1.1 meter, and then you have here this P2, which is 1.44, and this is something different than which you have for the prototype. So there you have a different stiffness ratio between your pile and your soil. So this pile with the 6 millimeter wall thickness would simply be too stiff compared to your prototype. So you adjust your stiffness and you will end up in a pile in a wall thickness of only 1.5 millimeter. Of course, now you have a problem. Having a pile with 40 centimeter diameter and only 1.5 millimeter wall thickness, this will create then other problems like buckling and so on. So you don't want that. So what can you do now? Because to get your proper geometric response, you want to have this pile diameter, this pile length, and so on, and you want the stiffness because that's important for you. But you don't want the pile to buckle. Increase what? Decrease the length would be an option. What else? Soil stiffness, but we want to model. We want to know how our soil behaves. So then, reducing the soil stiffness, then we get another behavior. But stiffness is already good. You can use another material. You can go away from steel to another material, which allows you to have a bigger wall thickness. Yeah. So you either adjust the pile length or the pile material. Yeah, and that's why you often see piles which are made of plastic or so, because they simply have a better stiffness wall thickness ratio. Yeah. Okay. So and the other things were done. So and here's the design which I had here, which is Eva.
With the thickness as small as 1.5 millimeters, it would have scaling effects relative to the grain.
To the grain. Yeah, exactly. So here, I mean, in our case, if we purely have the pile wished in place, this is not really relevant because we also have the inner side. We don't push it, but we push it horizontally. So then the thickness of the pile does not really the wall thickness does not really have an effect, yeah, with respect to the grain size. But if you push it vertically, then of course, yeah, then you have it. Yeah, and that's also why you really have to take care of that. Okay, yeah, so this is the classical pile design without any fiber optics or so. But if you use fiber optics, then it's much easier, much better. And I also wanted to add, probably you might consider measuring the temperature in your pit, because typically these large-scale pits are not temperature controlled. And if you have a high cyclic test which runs over many days or weeks, then of course you should be aware of your temperature, because that might affect your results, yeah, your measurements. Okay, so I think from there, thank you you did a good job in evaluating that. And I now take the final 1 minute or 2 minutes just to run you through this data assessment. And I leave that up to you to do that homework, to do that as a homework. I will also send it to you, the results. So I'm curious to know whether anyone will do the exercise, but you could do. So data processing. Who of you is using Python in there? Okay, who is aware of Python language? Okay, it's the majority. Who of you is using it on a, let's say, weekly basis? 1, 2, 3. Okay. I strongly recommend you, if you are working on your PhD, to use this. This is the language of the engineer of the next century, I would say. This is I'm really convinced of that. Yeah, so, and you should really have a look on that. And you will find here at least some programs or some packages, some libraries I just recommend you. So just, if you want to start with that, you can look at these and say, this is very, very powerful to analyze data. And here I also printed for you. Of course, we will not talk through it, but you have some examples on how you could evaluate data, pick some data, for example, here from a high cyclic test in a centrifuge, pick some data so that you can create a trend here, because we are interested in the trend of the deformation, and then plot it. And this is, for example, here you have a plot script. In the end, you can create such a nice graph. Yeah, because you always have to remember that if you want to present your results, you should do it proper. Yeah, and this is really because if you mess this up, then no one will fall in love with your results. So you do a proper presentation, do a proper, have proper descriptions of your data, and have a good experimental representation, and then you can really have a good success with your results. So take your time to do that. And if you do it proper from the very beginning, you are really saving a lot of time in your later writing your thesis and writing your papers and so on. So you better work from the very beginning. And the second exercise we had here, this is where you have the Excel sheet, and the idea was that you evaluate the data and then plot them. And I can show you what comes out, because it's really not so difficult. And we made this in Excel, yeah. So because then it's easy for you to do it immediately. So this is just the load displacement of the head, and then we had here the bending moments over the depths. And there's one thing which you should notice, and this is here, we have the total unloading, and here you see that there's a very large remaining bending moment at the pile foot. And this is of course a bit unlikely in the case of total unloading. Yeah, so what happens here? So if you spot something like that, which you don't expect, then you always should revisit your data. And if you plot now, for example, the single values over the time, then you notice that this value here does not change any longer. So here you have any problem either with your sensor or with your data transmission or whatever, something went wrong there, or with your code. Yeah, so in the end, here you see, okay, this is not reliable, so you have to kick out this data. You lose that, but then you see, okay, now it looks more reliable. Yeah, so always look at your data and not just plot them and take them for real, but really be careful in what you have there, and always make sanity checks for your data. Okay, so that's it from my side. Do you have any questions? Excellent. So then, I'm gonna leave you now. I wish you a pleasant stay here in Zurich, and a good last session now with Lee from NGI. And then, yeah, a good day tomorrow, and enjoy your stay, and hope we see each other then in future.